Have you ever heard of a princess that got dropped through the cracks?
Mental health and having depression doesn't mean that you're crazy.
Right.
It means that you have a problem.
The abuse at home is what motivated me to leave at 13 years old and go do my own thing.
Little girls are taught, I know I was one of them from a very young age, what goes on in this house stays in this house. Wrong attitude. Because of that very philosophy, at 18 I wound up in a psych ward because I was told to hold it. Keep it quiet, don't cry, don't tell anybody. You know, there would be consequences if I did. For a child, that's a lot. For an adult, that's a lot. My name is Dee Dee Miller, and I am a product of my environment and past situations.
I am a survivor of domestic violence. I'm an overcomer of domestic violence.
It's kind of hard for me to talk about my story because I don't really know what my story is. I kind of just moved through life the best way I could.
My name is Rashida Bailey, and my story is, have you ever heard of a princess that got dropped through the cracks? I was born in April the 19th, 1974. My father, I understand, worked for the Navy, but he was a poet. My mother was an artist. They separated 10 years after I was born, and I was taken from my dad.
So what happened was we had a fire in our house first, and my mother jumped out the window, and she suffered from smoke inhalation. And as a result of the smoke inhalation, her lungs were weak. She was 7 months pregnant, and about 2 or 3 weeks after the fire, her lungs began to collapse. Not quite. She also was doing drugs. She was doing freebase is what she did. And so that weakened her lungs even more while she was pregnant. And she ended up going to the hospital, and the hospital put her on a respirator. And they took her off the respirator too soon. And so when they took her off the respirator, her lungs collapsed and she went into a cardiac arrest twice. And she woke up a vegetable. She stayed in that state for like 24 years in an institution. But when the initial accident happened, I had to live with my grandmother. And I stayed with her for about 2 years before I left. My grandmother was verbally abusive. In her household, my uncles and my aunts lived. They all were on drugs. And there's a lot of chaos going on in that place, so I had a hard time even existing there, so I decided to leave.
In the process of the separation, we were raised by Hispanics, my brother and I, and we were abused every way up that you can abuse a child. And me as a little girl, on my 5th birthday, I was molested, forced to do things, and threatened to be killed if I told anybody.
Like most of the black women I know, I was molested at one point. I was raped at one point. These are things I kept to myself for a very long time. So much so that it made me sick.
The sexual abuse and the molestation happened to me repeatedly as a kid. So my mother was single and she had to work and she had to rely on different family members or friends to take care of me and my little brother.
I was raped at 17, had a daughter. They took her from me. I just kept going down and didn't understand why wouldn't nobody listen to me, why wouldn't nobody help me.
When I was growing up, it was normal for the people who took care of me, for some of the people who took care of me, and the people that they had around, to do inappropriate sexual things to me and to the other kids that were around. This was normal, and it happened often.
I can remember at 18, going through my first flip out, wanting to kill myself, not knowing what to do, already having a kid, and one on the way. I found myself in Tucker's, the mental hospital, because I just couldn't handle it. Put a 45 to my head, and by the grace of God, I don't even know how it happened, but some folks came through the door, and that's what I remember. Some folks came through the door, and they kind of rescued me, and but they put me in Tucker's for it. And from there, I started to realize that the things that had happened to me so long ago were starting to manifest, because when you keep things quiet and you keep them inside, they come out anyway.
And one day my daughter came back and wanted to be with me and her little brother, because I do have 2 kids. And from 2003 on up, I realized that it wasn't my battle, but everything that I go through, I managed to come out okay.
For African American women, domestic violence has been something that's been around literally since the beginning of time.
So I had a story to share. And I did a film recently, and I was a victim of domestic violence in the film. And I kind of walked through the streets still in makeup. And it was so amazing how the black women got completely away from me. It was almost as if they thought whoever attacked me was gonna come after them if they helped me. I went up to one lady, and I had the painted on black eye, and I had the bruised lip, and I said, I just need a little help. I need somebody to help me. And she told me, and I quote, honey, you gotta help yourself. And she walked away from me. That's community. So for me, I just felt like if this was a real situation, then that woman may not make it tonight.
It got me to a point where I felt like, why be it? So, I tried to commit suicide on, say, about 4 to 5 different attempts.
In our community, you almost get shunned, and it's like, oh, man up.
I had 20-something years of buildup of abandonment and anger.
I remember being told, man, you too young to be stressed out. You too young to go through, you too young to. So for me, it was like, if I'm too young, I ain't gonna say nothing.
Depression wasn't something that was ever discussed or acknowledged as being something that you have to like kind of cope with or deal with.
I don't want the perception or the illusion of what it's supposed to be. I want to be, this is what it is. So
that's why conversations like this matter.
Life's been crazy.
At the age of 20, I met a man who then became my abuser. I didn't grow up in an abusive household. I was not raised around abuse. I didn't know what it looked like. For me, I was always told by the women in my family to never let a man put his hands on you. But I was never told or educated about what the other forms of abuse looked like. I didn't know what manipulation looked like. I didn't know what intimidation looked like, or isolation. I didn't know all of these deceptive practices that one might use in their pursuits to victimize someone. And as years went on, my abuser became my fiance, and we got engaged, and shortly after that we moved in together. From there, the abuse got worse. I remember our first incident. He pushed me down on the floor. It was not a physical act. Well, it was a physical act because he pushed me down on the floor, and I remember it scared me, and I didn't know quite what that was because I had never experienced anything like that before. And I just remember the look of terror and the look that was on his face. The first physical incident was on a New Year's Eve, and we had been celebrating at our house with our friends and family, and he head-butted me, and it split my forehead open. And that was something I had never experienced. I was very upset. I was scared once I found out that I had blood pouring from my forehead. Of course, he tried to apologize, and he pleaded for me to forgive him, and I did. I forgave him. I never left. I stayed there, and over 11 years, I endured physical, mental, and sexual abuse by the hands of this person.
Once you get past, if you can make it past childhood and the experiences that you go through with molestation and rape, and you make it to adulthood, then you have to worry about getting raped on dates and in your relationships and beaten. And it's just so much trauma that keeps us in this circle, this cycle, where we teach our children through abuse how to be abused, what to take, how to take it, how long to take it, instead of stopping the cycle when we see it manifesting, especially when we already go through it. So I'm gonna say it's trauma. We don't get enough help. We don't seek help. We don't look for help. We want it to go away, so we keep our mouths closed, keep our heads up, and hope nobody find out about it.
In June of 2008, I finally got enough strength and courage to leave and expose what was going on for all of those years at the hands of this person, and let my family and friends know what was going on. I had to take the veil off. I had to take the cover off and take off my mask that I had been wearing all of those years and tell the truth. And the truth was that I was being abused. And that was the reality of it, because everyone thought that we had this great relationship and he was this great guy, but that wasn't the truth. I was living a lie.
We all have to check ourselves, and if we see somebody hurting, even if we don't speak to them, call somebody. Tell somebody. Point them in the right direction, slide them a card, something. Just don't leave them out there.
2 years ago, in May of 2015, my abuser, he shot and killed his 1-year-old daughter and her mother, and then caused an accident that led not only to his death, but 2 other innocent people. And I realized at that point just how real that domestic violence can be. And of course I knew it was real because I had experienced it. But to know that it's really real and it can be deadly.
So I left my grandmother's house because she was verbally abusive. She said things to me like, I don't have to take care of you, which hurt my feelings. And I struggled with wanting to physically hurt my grandmother. I wanted to hit her, I wanted to beat her, and I had a feeling that I would possibly kill her. And when the feeling became so great that I thought that I might act on it, I decided that my best bet was to leave and save myself from doing 1,000,000 years in jail. So that's what I did.
Traumatic experiences, dealing with it is not having someone in your corner that believe you. Dealing with it and not having a mother or a father or even a sibling that can vouch for you or stand up for you. To have those and not to have their support is very difficult because you don't have no one that will believe you. So how are you supposed to maintain? So I think the biggest thing is not having someone that you can actually trust and talk to or to know that you're safe with.
It got me to a point where I felt like, why be here? So, I tried to commit suicide on, say, about 4 to 5 different attempts.
In our community, you almost get shunned, and it's like, oh, man up.
I had 20-something years of buildup of abandonment and anger.
I remember being told, man, you too young to be stressed out. You too young to go through, you too young to. So for me, it was like, well, if I'm too young, I ain't gonna say nothing.
Depression wasn't something that was ever discussed or acknowledged as being something that you have to like kind of cope with or deal with.
I don't want the perception or the illusion of what it's supposed to be. I want to be, this is what it is. So
That's why conversations like this matter.
Life's been crazy.
Little girls are taught. I know I was one of them from a very young age. What goes on in this house stays in this house. Wrong attitude. Because of that very philosophy, at 18, I wound up in a psych ward because I was told to hold it. Keep it quiet, don't cry, don't tell anybody. There would be consequences if I did. For a child, that's a lot. For an adult, that's a lot.
For me, I didn't really have time to be depressed or stressed or really much of anything. I needed to keep on moving and keep on living my life because I didn't have anybody if I fell down and couldn't get back up. So I had to keep going, or else I don't know what would have happened. Maybe I would have ended up in an institution like my mother, or maybe I would have killed myself because the pain would have been so great.
So many women are dealing with this, or they have dealt with it, but are too afraid to talk about it. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. And that's another reason why people don't talk, because they're afraid and they're ashamed. That's what an abuser will do. They will, make your self-esteem go down. The emotional abuse, it drives the self-esteem down, and you feel low and you get tired. And some people just want to give up, and they might fall into a state of depression, and it's hard to come out of that once you have gotten that low and you feel hopeless, like there's nothing to live for and life is over and I might as well just stay here because I can't do any better, and this person tells me they love me, but this is how they show me that they love me, and this is how dad showed me that he loves me, and this is how dad showed mom that he loved her. So this is what a man is supposed to do. And if you haven't been taught any different and you haven't seen anything any different, then you start to believe that that is actually the way that things are supposed to be.
And I realized, because I am up in age, and that means I've lived a little, I've learned. They went through something themselves, because a lot of people are only what they see, how you're taught, the way that you learn how to speak, the way that you learn how to eat. You saw somebody do this. So if someone is attacking you, that person have been through situations themselves, but they just didn't have something within themselves to make them realize that if these people are hurting me, there's no way that they can be right. See, I don't know if they comprehend that. So to go to a person that attacked me I would have to step back down to ask them that question when I know deep inside they just needed help themselves. But it's been too much smothering through all these years that people, they can't see that.
We have to speak. We have to speak and let someone know what's going on. Because yes, it's an epidemic. It's an epidemic, and too many of us are going through this. And you know, statistically, 1 out of 4 women over the age of 18 would be affected by domestic violence. And in certain cities, it's more like 1 out of 3.
I would say it's very important to seek help. Get into counseling. Counseling is a very real and awesome tool, but a lot of times it's shrouded in stigma. You know, you got to be crazy if you're going to see a shrink, or there's something really got to be wrong with that person in order to go see a shrink, when it's just talking. If we can get comfortable in our own skins enough to talk about what we've been through with somebody else, it would ease so much pain. It would stop so much hurt. But we're conditioned. We're conditioned from little girls. Keep it quiet, keep it to yourself. Don't say a word. I don't want to hear you talking about it. That's our business. All of these phrases and statements are wrong. They're wrong. And they teach our girls to stay in situations they don't need to be in.
Once someone has decided that they're finally ready to leave, that they have had enough, that they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and that whatever that event has happened that has made them realize that this isn't right and this isn't the way that I want to live. There are organizations out there that can be reached out to, 24-hour hotlines. We have a 24-hour nationwide hotline for domestic violence that can be called any time of day, and they can connect you with any shelter within your area. If you don't have somewhere to go, I would definitely suggest that.
Checking in with people, checking in with family. If you know a friend is being abused, check in with them. Do what you can. You know, utilize CSBs, local CSBs, organizations, and these are community service boards. They can help you with where to find counseling. Research, use the tools at your fingertips. Don't sit in silence. Talk to somebody.
Well, in order to get to this space that I'm in right now, I did have to seek help, and I did have to learn. I had to learn a lot of stuff. I had to look at all of the things that I've been through, and I get some perspective on it.
Forgiveness is also a big part of that process. Not only forgiveness of that person that's abused you, but also forgiveness of self. Forgiving yourself for what you've been through, and forgiving yourself for allowing yourself to go through it, because you did. You stayed there and you allowed yourself to go through it. So forgive yourself for it. And once you are able to forgive, then eventually you'll come to a place of peace. And it's like a peace like no other. And you can love again. Just know that you can love again. And there is life after.
I sat down and I got to know myself. And I realized that I was an awesome person. And every gift that God gave me, I do to better myself. So I think the biggest thing is to get to know who you are. If people are attacking you, you need to realize that you must be something, because they wouldn't bother you if it was any other reason. So my biggest thing is to get to know who you are.
You You know how people always talk about heartbreak? How they can't go on without that person they love. That nothing else in life matters without them. That's me. My heart died a year ago. And once my heart was gone, I vowed to save other hearts. Make sure no one would have to go through the same pain as me. But while I was saving other hearts, who was gonna revive me?
I know you're angry, confused, scared. You don't know what's happening. You don't have to be afraid of it. You have to choose to use your power to harm or to heal. Baby, there's so much about your powers that you don't understand. Your gift. So much for you to learn.
It got me to a point where I felt like, why be it? So, I tried to commit suicide on, say, about 4 to 5 different attempts.
In our community, you almost get shunned and it's like, oh, man up.
I had 20-something years of buildup of abandonment and anger.
I remember being told, man, you too young to be stressed out. You too young to go through, you too young to. So for me, it was like, well, if I'm too young, I ain't gonna say nothing.
Depression wasn't something that was ever discussed or acknowledged as being something that you have to like kind of cope with or deal with.
I don't want the perception or the illusion of what it's supposed to be. I want to be, this is what it is. So
that's why conversations like this matter.
Life's been crazy.